Good day, brothers and sisters. We are so happy to be here with you again. This is my favorite kind of show here with our favorite guest and co-host, Melanie Renault. And welcome to the Glen Zone here and Alex Saz Show here with Glenn Herring. And why do we talk about tartaria and mud floods and all those theories? And just as you can tell, we showed you the video of technology that supposedly is so brand new, or like we don't think of technology as something that we had for hundreds of years. And we showed you the turn of the century and how people were thinking. But if you notice, all of that technology was associated with freedom of transportation, with your movement, to getting around, to exploring and discovering new things. And seems like, and nowadays they're trying to curtail this by including things like 15-minute cities and climate change and pandemic lockdowns. And you say, why? Well, we tell you why here every day on the show, because you are and we are modern slaves. And we are modern slaves to our technology. Would it be a smart or not so smart device in your not so smart hands? Would it be a gas pump with enormous carbon tax, which ultimately limits your ability to travel outside of your budget? And then you have, things like your budgets that you spend on heating your home instead of spending on things that you really want to do. And this brings us to a show today. Why is it so important? And why is free energy is no longer part of this world? Because back in the day, that's what it was. We had this. And the cities were constructed completely opposite from 15-minute cities, where you were not limited to what it is. And they were designed to be very accessible, not only energy-wise, but otherwise as well. And we're here to explore that with Melanie. Glenn, how you doing, my friend? What are we going to talk about today?
Oh, very good, champion. Today is going to be a very interesting show with Melanie. Like always, she always expands our peripheral of knowledge and wisdom. Today we're going to be talking about armories and the significance of the building style of these massive structures. And they're such beautiful buildings, the architecture, and obviously it has something to do with this free energy that we're also going to be learning about from Mr. Nikola Tesla. He was a Serbian-American scientist. He studied he never graduated from the education systems, by the way, but he self-studied in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, structural engineering, and the ability to take energy and apply it into motion in today's 3D world.
I'm glad you brought it up, the whole education system and everything else, because he was an inventor. So invent things, you need to have critical thinking component to yourself. And if you go into a modern educational system, you're probably going to forget about all that. And you're going to be made to regurgitate things that being programmed into you. Okay, so without further ado, Melanie, how you been? It's been a while.
It's been a little while. I'm very happy to be back in the studio with you guys to talk about some more interesting aspects of old world architecture, old world technology, tartarian inspiration, and things like that. So a great show today to talk about armories. We kind of take them, well, maybe not for granted, but they're a weird element in a lot of cities that we've had in North America. But it comes from England, this idea of having armories. And they say so that, well, this is the story. The history tells us it comes from England, right? And that it's an English thing that continued in Canada and in the States, for example, where they had regiments of volunteers, soldiers that were drilling, doing different practicing and keeping themselves in shapes in those different armories that we find all over North America. More in the west side of the country, in the Midwest, we would say. We have quite a few examples in Montreal that we will go through. We did some nice filming a few weeks ago to show you the details of those. And we'll see a bit the link to free energy. So free energy, which is a concept that, is interesting to me because we could go back to tap into this free energy. And that's what's really exciting, I find, about this, is that we could reverse to doing this instead of paying for electricity, and being charged for living, basically. Luckily, we're not charged for the air that we breathe yet, at least.
No, that's
Carbon
not true.
tax.
Carbon tax, good point.
Is
Good
an
point.
indirect tax on the air that we breathe, the water that we drink, we pay tax, the land that we live on, we pay tax. Most stuff that we consume, we pay tax, and also we pay tax on our salary. In other words, we give up our time on the planet to earn an income, and they tax your time.
Yeah, and again, if you think you're free, brothers and sisters, in this Western society, try not to pay your real estate tax if you own a house.
Yeah, you're free to pay taxes all the time.
Yeah, of course.
Try not to pay. Yeah, well, I think your income tax or whatever in Canada, I think you can get away with not paying it for a few years, and then they come after you.
Yeah, they came after me after 4 years. So I'm working on that. So I was looking at this book that I got a few years ago on America's armories. And so basically mostly in the States, obviously, but very interesting book that I got at the War Museum, of course, in Ottawa. But through there, it was talking about the different armories and why they got built around the States, which is a similar history in Canada from what they tell you. There's over 100 armories that have been built at the end of the 19th century to the early 20th century in the States. In Montreal alone, we still have about 6 of them that are still in existence, with some of them that have disappeared as well, including one that I found, a building that I find fascinating when I discovered it. It's called the Craig Street Drill Hall. And Craig Street was Saint-Antoine Street from today. So this building used to be at the corner of Saint-Antoine and Hotel de Ville, which is now the Ville-Marie Highway, basically. But you can see the size of this massive construction. Such a stunning, huge building. It was pretty much like a whole block, like a whole city block. Like that's how big this construction was. So it's pretty fascinating to me to see huge buildings that have disappeared like this in Montreal and other places, and to have also a lot of them that are still in existence. But the Craig Street Drill Hall is quite a stunning construction, in my opinion.
Especially for its time, the size, the building of it. I mean, we look in the picture, you see horse and buggies. Okay, that's just to transport the material around, which is a feat in itself. But now, how do you get it up to that height?
And this was supposedly built in the 1890s. Of course,
I also noticed all the, I think that's telegraph/telephone wires stretched above.
Lots of wires.
That would be my guess based on my understanding of what they taught me, but I'm not even sure if that's correct.
Not chemtrails?
Well, what's interesting is that you see there's a pole in the photo, like on the right-hand side of the photo, and if you look at carefully, there's no wires that seem attached to it. So there's a theory that a lot of these poles were also a way that the energy was getting transferred from one place to another, and that all these wires were included, painted on, and put in, like modified on certain photos to fit the narrative that we're being told of electricity has to travel through wires and things like that for us to get it. But if you look to a lot of old photos, you'll see those poles, like the one on the right-hand side with like quite a few lines at the top. And it's pretty interesting because sometimes there's no wires at all linked to them.
In a pyramid shape too, obviously.
True.
So that leads on to other potential, they call it conspiracy theories, but applications would be a better word for it.
Yeah, questioning the history. So if we look at what they said about the armories in the States, I have a little quote here that they say that there was a time when the armories were a symbol of the might of the state and its determination to maintain order at any cost. So they justifies some of the armories and some of the regiments that were created as saying that they were really scared of like riots and social fights between the rich and the poor, and that's why you needed to have those regiments to make sure to keep the citizen safe, because the cops, there was not that many cops at the time either, and they didn't necessarily trust them. So these were more like neutral, if you want, soldiers in a way, and they would live in these, well, but like they would drill and do exercises in these big halls. We can look for a few minutes. Let's go to New York City. New York, that still has a lot of their armories, and we'll see some examples. Like the buildings are just incredible, massive structures. A lot of them take like almost a whole block, of the city. We have some all over New York City. And what they say, it's interesting. They say that all the armories that were erected before 1900s were designed to look like medieval castles and fortresses, and that style got abandoned after 1910. That's in the States. It's not exactly the same case in Montreal. We'll see some example a bit later that were built in the 1910s that look like total fortresses.
Is that it?
Yeah, here we have some examples of different armories in New York. And what's interesting also is that you see when they were constructed, and most of them are built in 1 year, 2 years. I think 3 years is pretty much the longest time it took to build any of these incredible buildings. So, for example, here the Rose Hill one, and it shows you what they've been converted as, because not many of them are still armories. At least not in the States. The ones that we'll see in Montreal in a few minutes are mostly all still functioning armories, basically.
It's ironic. You say they were looking like castles and fortresses. That was to keep people out. But a lot of these type of buildings now look like prisons, which are used to keep people in.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
bizarre.
Point. Yeah, right.
Well, it's exactly what I mentioned in the beginning of the show. It seems like the society switched. It's like the walls are built to keep people out, to keep people in, and that seems like that's the concept that we have. Same thing like the whole reconstruction of the supposed cathedrals, repurposing before we get to the free energy, and maybe even like healing vibration technology has changed into religious controlled style buildings type of thing, where they use for totally different purposes to enslave people versus to enhance people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's interesting is how they repurpose a lot of the old buildings for different things that are made to control us, right? So armories, it's linked to the army, it's linked to, like the state. This one's quite impressive in the Bronx. Look at how this looks like a total castle. And also like bricks, a lot of red bricks everywhere. Fascinating buildings like this one. Oh, this one took 5 years. Oh, that's a long time in those days
what
for
is the
these types.
Will you explain later what the significance of the bricks, of brick construction specifically?
Well, red bricks are supposed to be one of the best conductors of energy, of electricity, basically. So they were used in a lot of constructions. Obviously, throughout the world, we'll see a lot of red brick buildings that exist, and so it's meant to be a really good conductor, and could explain why they were used so much back in the days. This one in the Bronx, again, it looks like a total castle. King's Bridge too. It sounds very royal, and a medieval castle. And this was built in 1 year, 1913.
So energy is what builds an economy. That's how you grow an economy. So if you make the cost of energy cheaper and cheaper, the economy will grow quicker and quicker compared to your competitors. In other words, you have an advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's obviously they were ahead of their time back then. Well, that was a creation of the Anglo-American Empire, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it looks like the rest of the world has caught up very quickly.
Yeah, it's happening very fast. Look, another one, 1883 to 1884. So this was built in 1 year in the late 19th century.
Oh, by the way, I got a correction to make. Remember the I did the video about the Pine Street, Glen? I said it took 6 months. No, it's 3 years. So they were laying some pipe, they put in new pavement, and they put in some marble sidewalks or whatever. 6 years.
Oh, you're talking about today's modern day construction.
Pine Street.
Yeah,
just
minimalist construction, how long it takes.
Street.
Yeah.
And it's $2 million per block calculated.
Wow.
What I just described. Change the pipe, change the pavement, and put some decorative marble stone for the sidewalks. $2 million.
And they'll have to redo it in what, 3-4 years maybe, because it's not made to last. It's
the
pretty,
street, the inferior materials. So
Yeah,
the
exactly.
unions keep working.
Well,
yeah.
exactly. You got to keep them,
and
happy.
we'll address that too in later on the show too.
Look at that, 1870s in 1 year. That one's it's interesting how they have kind of different shapes. Like a lot of them are like this big kind of triangle, like the Craig Street drill hall that we saw in Montreal, and others look more like fortresses, like castles.
But still, like, what's the purpose of this triangular shape? Like, it doesn't seem like anything other than decorative, according to probably modern explanation, but it probably has a different purpose as well, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. Well, their explanation into these buildings is that they wanted to have a lot of space to be able to do their drills, right? So that they could do stuff like this, like inside, and keep training or whatever all year round. So this is the idea behind a lot of those big space. And what's impressive also is like a lot of them, the technology that was used in the sense of like supporting this huge roof was quite impressive. The one in Montreal, supposedly the Craig Street drill hall, the roof collapsed after a few years that it was built. And they had to redo it. So it's like, what, you didn't take in consideration the weather, the snow, and all of that. Here's another one again, 1880s, 1 year. So it's fascinating. They all look so.
Glenn, do you want to read the sign on the repurposing of this building now? It looks like a castle. Looks really cool, but look at the sign.
Nigerian, American,
Muslim integrated community.
Well, everybody needs a place to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's a sign of times. It's a sign of times how things are different, as Melanie was talking about repurposing of buildings like this.
Well, there's one race, big guys, the human race, and we were much more advanced, obviously, like over a century ago than we are today. Today, we, like you were saying before, you were saying before, Alex, we walk around with our cell phones, a new technology, and they're which is supposed to be a usable tool, but they're turning the population into tools, and we see it all the time. And then they're not able to perform at higher levels of awareness or being productive, even in the gym, for example. I look at people are not getting the same amount of results as they used to because their attention is diverted all the time.
But also, as a human population, we're a lot more in sync with each other. The civilization in general had a lot more similarities, and through architecture, we'll show. We've been showing on this Tartaria series, and we'll show it today, that there's a lot more similarities through evidence of architecture, for example, or the technology. And now it seems like we are more divided, and we continue to divide ourselves in the new division that seems to be very popular nowadays. And this is not the subject for today, is, well, which gender are you? That's an infinite amount of genders. So like we used to divide ourselves on, with passports, borders, ethnicities, races. And now that's not enough. Let's divide ourselves with genders. What's the latest thing? Do you want me to continue scrolling for all the armories?
We can look at the next one to see what we have on this one. So these were volunteer militia, so different from the army, which is quite an interesting. Eventually, a lot of them will get integrated into the army. Look at this. How stunning is that? Look at that tower. Like, it's so beautiful. I love looking at old buildings like this. They always blow my mind in how much beauty you can see.
But makes no sense. It looks like a medieval castle in New York. What's the like? It definitely was built before.
And it's now a homeless shelter for men. Interesting. That's a nice homeless shelter.
It's the round tower on the left. Obviously, to ascend that tower, it must be an ascending round staircase.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see all the different styles. And this built in 4 years in the late 1890s, obviously. And yeah, it could, if we showed you this photo without telling you where it was, you wouldn't guess New York City. I would never guess New York City if you showed me this, So it's interesting to see how a lot of those buildings look exactly like European castles, like different types of castle. This is another gorgeous one. 8th Avenue Armory in Brooklyn. Look at that. Like, it just looks so majestic. And so I think these armories definitely had other function back in the days that's linked to the distribution of free energy. And we're going to see with some of them in Montreal how it's pretty fascinating to see what's right next to the armories as well. Wow.
And it's all brick too.
Yes.
And the precision to build this with the brick, it's to such extent with the symmetry. And it's with
and
the
this is 2 years.
Try to build it with a brick today.
Yeah.
Try to find a crew. Try to find a union. They will be like, yeah, I'll build it. Give me 10 years and unlimited budget.
But that's it, right? Like the excuse is always, well, back in the days, they worked more and they were more like artisans and, you know, they knew different skills. And it's like, there's a certain level of skills that you can have, but you still have to put all those bricks. Like it's still like time consuming. It's really like, it's not a small feat.
And you also have to make those bricks somewhere.
Exactly. Those bricks need to be made too. So I like, they call it a castellated armory. So this one was to house equipment for the cavalry. So this is also where you use as storage rooms, big storage, basically. They were also a place where they had a lot of social activities. So it's interesting because they're a bit like the old school community center that they were used to, like a lot of balls. Well, that one's a bit boring compared to all the others.
Well, it seems like it's under construction.
But yeah, they're redoing it, an arsenal on this one. So it's interesting. They were very important locations for the city, for the people living in those different cities, because they were a place of gathering as well on the social aspect, not just for the militia and the army of volunteers, but there was a whole other social aspect that was quite interesting. And I find it interesting how a lot of these old buildings have this kind of effect of attracting people to them. Like that kind of tells me about the idea that there is like a special type of energy within those buildings that is like a conductor to gather them together in that space. And there must be, you know, a certain reason why you want to have that all together. That one's really beautiful.
By the way,
well.
if you can look at this building, and that would be my 2 cents to this. This could have been in the middle of Moscow, by the way. In terms of architecture, could be part of the Moscow architecture right here.
And also built in 2 years. You know, that's what blows my mind. It's the how quick supposedly all the constructions are done, you know. And to raise the money to build something like that also back in the days, most of them are sponsored in a private way by the different families of the young men that were part of those regiments, because some of them are really like, it was only the rich community that were part of those militia, you know. Some of them are like richer than others. But look at that. Another castle, this one in 1 year only, of course.
Looks like it could be somewhere in Middle East, this one.
Yeah. And it says partially demolished in the 60s. So imagine how big this was originally as well. So we still have the facade, but a lot of it has disappeared.
And we just hear that America looks like they want to empty a lot of their armories with the cluster bombs and send it over to Ukraine. So make more room in the armories, or maybe turn them into hotels or something. Make money off of them.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they also have to. Okay, so I have a theory about that, because all those cluster bombs, the weapons do have a past due time too. So they have to get rid of it somehow. I think the war conflicts is one of the ways. Freudian slip, right?
Yeah, that was a good one.
Tomato, same thing. Yeah.
So I believe the war conflicts in the world that we're experiencing now, if you notice specifically in Ukraine, brothers and sisters, they're not using very limited. I think they have a test ground for the new weapons, like the Kinjal, the Russian supersonic missile, for example. But the weapons on both sides, the Western side and the Russian side, they're using old Soviet technology. It seems like they're just disposing of it. So they're playing war chess with real people's lives, and, you know, bankers and money laundering and blah, 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 all this divide and conquer stuff. But they're using old technology. They just got to use it somehow. And then once it's destroyed on the battlefield, they take it, they'll melt it, and they'll build some new weapons with it. But at least they justified it, and the money laundered has facilitated that.
It's true.
But that's my 2 cents.
It's an interesting theory for sure. So let's go back to Montreal. We've seen a few from New York City, stunning buildings. And we'll look at some other Canadian cities as well after we've looked into Montreal. So we'll look at the footage that we recorded a little while ago.
Do you want to show the actual idea when we talk about free energy and how the buildings possibly?
Let's show the audience that image.
Very similar design to churches too. The big grand churches, obviously.
Yeah, true. There is a similar idea. So here, a very interesting photo that shows us about how the voltage is harnessed by architecture. So here we can see it says the height 100 volt per meter. That's why these buildings are tall, some shaped like a syringe or dome. Copper acts as a conductive facet for natural occurring static, and we'll see quite a few buildings, especially the armories, with copper on top of them. Mercury has electrical properties, but is known for its density and may have worked the way we use lithium today. It's also interesting to think about how, mercury has been diabolized, and it's like such a bad thing, and it's dangerous, but it was also very powerful, right? And it was used, depending how you used it, it was a great conductor as well. So
don't they use mercury gland to isolate gold? I'm pretty sure that's what they use as well.
They used to use it to measure the temperature.
Yeah, that's true. But it got too hot with the climate warming, right? So it's my understanding that none of this is possible without frequency. Using certain bells and organs, we use vibration to tap into the ether. In physics, this is where photons become entangled and start to gather around the antenna. The building does act like a syringe pulling from the ionosphere. Since all matter is bound by sound frequency is the most important element here. A resonator would be used to amplify the resonance and the harmonizer to refine the frequency. Bricks act as a natural battery storing the energy, and copper wires would extend downward as an electrical conduit to use for illumination and possibly warmth.
So is that the purpose of why we see and notice? Okay, so straight to the armories. So this is why a theory, right? So the armories, what?
I think the armories was kind of like a battery in a way, like a place to store potentially the energy.
Or maybe it's some sort of transformer.
Transformer also, like
a receiver.
Could be a receiver, a way to dispatch after to different places around the armory, because armories, a lot of them are built in very residential neighborhoods. Some are built on very specific spots, like there's a few along close to the mountain, for example, here in Montreal, and but there's always other constructions usually in the vicinity, so it could be this is theories. I don't know exactly what.
But we'll show the videos. We'll show the videos later to actually the frequency component and the vibration component. We'll have actually videos backing up, brothers and sisters. This is not just we guessing game, by the way. Here, this is a discussion. We come very well prepared. Years of research specifically on Melanie's part, and I've watched, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of videos in my lifetime regarding this, and read books and other things. And so this is not something I woke up yesterday and saw a funny video, and neither is Melanie. So is Glenn. We all come here prepared to discuss this. And you call in. We have a number right now posted is 1-800-ALEX-SASH. Oh, no, we don't have the number yet. But soon we'll have the interactive feature through YouTube and everything else. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Do you want me to go straight to the videos that we have?
Yeah, let's start with our first video. But yeah, it's fascinating, when you start thinking about it like that, with the free energy and the buildings being conductors, then you start appreciating even and understanding more the architecture and the way that things were built, and why there's copper everywhere, why you have those big churches. And when you think about it as them being resonators and conductors, and it sharing the energy all around, it becomes very fascinating.
Maybe we should play those videos first. Okay.
Let's do it.
Let's do that then. All right. So the first one will show also similarities of the things that we have in the world right now. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so here we see some the top of different churches. I think this one is in Cologne in Germany, and you can see it looks very inspired. Like you have the architecture in Cambodia that can be very similar. So it's interesting to see little details in the architecture that we will find all over the world.
It's very symmetrical, and the shapes are very particular. If you see the circles and the little spikes and they're sort of sticking out. They also remind you of some sort of kind of electrical fractal shapes. Yes, Glenn, what's up?
Yeah, it also reminds me of the spike protein that they keep putting out there, which I've never really saw, by the way.
Excellent.
That's a great point, Glenn. So yes, especially right here. Look at this.
the shape of like the way that the stone is cut. Basically, it's interesting when you think about it that it all has like a specific role as a transmuter to share the energy and to pass it from one place to another. And yeah, these look like a bit like Hindu temples, you know, some of them like a lot of little details, you know, and things like that. So interested to see here, it's been, you know, it's a different type of architecture, but you have the same idea of, and then when you think about it in free energy way, you think, okay, well, that makes sense. Those are conductors. This is a way to harvest the free energy that's around us and then share it around with the different people living in the vicinity. And I would explain why you might have had so many what we call now churches all over in different neighborhoods and different areas, or cathedrals for sure. So it's very interesting when you start thinking in a different way, and when you start looking at the role of those buildings. I believe that the churches were also very important for our health, for our healing. They would, use, because it's all energy, it's all vibration, it's all oscillation. So they would use positive vibration, positive oscillation to adjust us, to adjust our body so people wouldn't be sick, wouldn't have disease. And disease comes from ease, like you're not at ease, your body is not
or they also use it to help the body to repair quicker. You know, one of the weird things was, if you ever saw the old Star Trek, when Bones, the doctor, would heal people not with opening them up and cutting something out. It would heal them with a little device that would recognize a certain frequency needed to exponentially speed up the healing process of the individual in that affected area. It was amazing.
Yeah, it's very fascinating, and that's why, you know, things like sound healing and things like that, you can heal a lot with sound. And, you know, they call the big instruments that you have in those now what we call churches or cathedrals, they're called organs. And they used to play those for your organs. Like, it's literally like so many times they tell you the truth in plain words, and like right in the words, they tell you exactly what it used to be for, what it is for. But that's it. Like the organs was played to help you heal.
On the same end, then, okay, language is important. We always mention it here. Again, what's the other one? Like, is the wall to keep you in or keep you out? So the language and the construction is important. Think of those other words, the way we are programmed and constructed in terms of even perception of time. Let's take a week for a moment. What is the time of the day? Morning. Yeah, it's also associated with going to the morning when we mourn somebody's dead. Weekend. Right?
Yeah.
Awake, going to the wake, right? Yeah. So the way we can perceive and the construction of the language and the way it's used to be ingrained into our daily life is very similar to have negative affirmations, maybe on some subconscious level for the people as well.
Yeah, I stopped saying good morning because of because it's about morning, right? So I'm like, I say good day now.
Buenos dias.
Buenos dias, which is good day, literally. And bonjour, which is also good day, right? But in English, it's switched to you could say good day, but the matin, the morning, you know, it's got an interesting connotation behind it. Or found dead, right? I think we mentioned that last time when we were talking in the last show that we were talking about. So yeah, language is so powerful, and there's a lot of clues, and especially in the English language. There's a lot of hidden signification. It'd be a fun one to do another show about more vocabulary and like what the words are hiding, basically.
So there's a theory that there's a demon, and his name is 26 letters of English alphabet. So every time you speak English, you invoke one.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually true.
So one thing that's interesting with the churches, and one thing that I've heard also, is that a lot of the stained glass were put in later because to fit the religious narrative. Because often on the stained glass in the churches, you'll see the history of the Bible and the history of different saints and things like that. So fitting their new narrative, basically. So apparently, a lot of these buildings didn't have those windows. It was open so that the vibration could also get out and reach a lot of people around. And you could go also just inside. And, it makes sense. Like when you walk into a church or cathedral, basilica, there's the vibration is different in those buildings. You can feel like there's something completely different energetically.
Trying to get you the sound to and the frequency vibration to 432 hertz, which is the most calming of all music, and how we've got away from that purposely, where the music producing studios don't want that out there.
They use it at 440, right, or whatever.
Yeah, they changed the hertz,
and
frequency.
I think the Nazis did, or whoever did it. But also, okay, I'll give you another one. How about the colors of chakras? They were also changed by design for whatever mal purpose. So the red, the crown, the root chakra, right, underneath your coccyx, that's associated with fears that we hold, right? I'm gonna give you one, right? So they tell you that's the color of that chakra is red, and always like when you meditate, like imagine red. Well, why would you ingrain and imagine fear? Why would you bring on and focus on fear? Like Glenn, it's what you say. Instead of focusing on something you don't want, focus on something that you want. So that's how they actually cleverly they do it. They gave you something. Oh, like let's meditate on the red. That's your fifth chakra. Brothers and sisters, you know what the original color of the true color of the root chakra is? White. And now it makes sense, doesn't it? Now go ponder and meditate on it. Sorry. Sorry to interrupt.
Think about the white light. So again, look at the design of these. Like so many details. Like this can't just be like for the fun of it. It has to have a function. Like to add these kind of so many details to a building. It seems like a lot of like random like extravagance to add for no purpose, for just to make it pretty.
But it's not random. It has actually particular symmetry,
exactly,
and in a very particular design too.
Yeah, and it's part of the designs of these constructions to transfer the energy and to harvest the energy from these buildings, so that it can be sent out all over.
What
so these
about
are some
the ones, the pictures you took more locally there? You were on the ground doing it with your own telephone camera.
Let's do that.
Let's look at some of the footage that we took in Montreal, and we'll see a bit about the history of the remaining armories in Montreal. So this is the first one that we filmed. This one is located in Westmount. It's called the Royal Montreal Regiment. And this building was built obviously in just 1 year, in 1925. So you can see it is really big. It's almost like a full block. And notice also the copper, right? We mentioned that copper was a good conductor. So you can see on top of the little towers, and we'll have a zoom in a few moments, these copper tops, basically, that we see on a lot of buildings. Not just in Montreal, all over the world.
With the receiver antenna on top of the copper structure.
Exactly. And it's interesting because a lot of these antennas now they say, oh, it's the flagpole, but like, so some of them, they justify it as saying, oh, well, some of them were for flags back in the days. Obviously not these types of ones, but there's others where they look like they could be flagpoles. So we see here the front of the building, and here's our little zoom on the copper tops, and as well, so part of the Canadian Army. So a lot of them they're part of the national parks actually, which is kind of a random one. They're not parks. Again, the red brick, right? Stunning red brick all over. So a way to keep the electricity in that building before it gets redistributed, for example. You can see also the small circular windows. So who knows if before there was maybe no glass, and that was also a way to get the energy out. So very interesting building. This is one of 12 armories that were built between World War I and World War II. Also interesting, you're between two wars. So where's the money coming from as well? The country is still coming back from, having suffered a lot through the changes of the war.
And in between the two wars, in other words, during the Great Depression.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah, this is 1925, right? Not long before the Depression. So this is at the back of the building. So interesting to see a bit examples of what could be some mud floods, showing that there is some lower levels at the bottom of these buildings. Who knows how deep it goes? Angle. Exactly. Who knows how deep these goes? And we'll see that on a few of the different armories that we looked at. We're looking to see what can we see. It's always, I love walking around and looking at buildings, and whenever I do go explore some buildings to take photos of them, I always make a point to go all around, because sometimes it's in the back really far in the corner that you didn't think of going to look, that you'll see some more evidence of this one was kind of funny because the new construction was really not made to last compared to
compared to the brick. So we just showed you, even when the front, whatever the repair fell off, underneath that was a true concrete brick, and look at this. Right.
Yeah.
So this is obviously some kind of new addition, some kind of security structure, maybe.
That they added in the back.
I don't know. Maybe that's the garbage
ventilation.
Zone.
Who knows?
Who knows what's in there? But look how they built that.
Yeah, it's hilarious. It looks super solid, but it's nothing. It's things have changed a little bit.
Stucco, a spray-on wall. It's a spray-on wall. It literally is a spray-on wall. But it looks like this pretty strong, secure structure, but it clearly isn't.
Yeah, that was quite a funny realization, because it's easy to make it look like, they're trying to probably mimic the stone, right? So they want it to look a bit like that, but clearly not the same quality of construction.
But also they have to justify spending taxpayer money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Maybe it's as simple as that. Maybe there is no conspiracy. Maybe it's somebody just stealing.
Yeah, they make it look like the real construction would cost 10 times that, and so that's the quote on the project. And then for some reason, the remaining 9 times of the money goes towards the politicians and the contractors and the hush money, and the world keeps turning.
Yeah, exactly. But what I thought was very interesting when we went to film it, is to also see what was in the vicinity, what was on the street right across from this beautiful armory. And we went and did a bit of exploring on the other side, because I was looking at those tiny little iron things that you see on tops of the architecture, right? Kind of. So in architecture, they tell you, it's to look nice.
Mini Taj Mahals.
Mini Taj Mahals, true.
And the domes, sort of mini domes holding it up.
Yeah, exactly. So this to me was kind of like a capture of that free energy
receiver,
and this,
right?
the receiver, exactly. And so this is the street that's right across from the armory. And it's interesting because on one side they kept the nice little designs and metal, but on the other side they were removed because a lot of them were removed because it was really more hard to take care of it. And so a lot of buildings that we had in Montreal, residential, had a lot of these, and most of them have been removed. But in Westmount, luckily, we found a few that still has these, I think it's iron, that's like on top
Iron rods.
of iron rods, exactly, on top of these. These are stunning examples of late 19th century construction, basically. But what's interesting as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that technically the armory was built later as per their dates. But was it really, or is it just,
the dates,
the history?
Yeah, the history has been rewritten most likely.
Exactly.
Yeah, we see things happen. They show us something high in the sky with an antenna on it, and during a thunderstorm, lightning will strike it, and you see it, right? So right there, obviously, it's a way that attracts the energy. It's a receiver for it.
True.
And so you have these mini receivers, and maybe that was for the electricity that was generated by man, not by nature, using nature for man's advantage.
Yeah, inspired by nature, because nature is the smartest, and a lot of inventions are inspired by nature. And we were lucky enough to meet to randomly meet this man, Thomas, that's gonna talk to us a bit about the house that he lives in.
He lived right across the street from the armory.
Yeah, pretty much.
One
of those houses,
with the
exactly.
extensions on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Thomas, and I live with one of these old houses built in 1895. And I was just mentioning that redoing original bathroom just a few years ago, that the original cast iron piping was in such a good shape that it could be reused and probably good for another 100 years. So they used to make things to last. All right.
Why do you think things are not like this anymore? Because even the building right there, the armory, they don't build structures like this. This has been built a long time as well.
Right.
And we just walked around and we saw that they can't reproduce.
No, they can't. And cast iron, I'm in renovation, made 30 years later, 1920s and 30s, certainly would not last. They just fail. So it's just the way things made. Didn't cut the corners. So.
How big is the basement? Sorry.
The basement is, depending on the houses, a lot of people had dug it out because it was too low. So they're definitely nice and spacious if the owner went through that. So, and they have a nice backyards as well, at least on that side. So,
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks so
Where are
much.
you from, guys?
What it just came to me when he mentioned the basements are too low. So it goes back. You know how we walk around Old Port, for example, guys, and we saw a lot of the basement construction, sort of like they've made the floors to be full size living spaces. And I guess you can argue for this is to utilize as much space as possible, or repurpose it, or was it always there? It seems like maybe they never built basements before, because basement is, if you think about it, maybe other than storage, it's a useless place. Or maybe some kind of utility space. But in terms of as a living quarters, it doesn't have the best. You don't have the sunlight, you have the moisture in there. In terms of energy, it's probably also not good for you because it's some kind of, draining, I don't know, grounding thing. Maybe constantly energy is drained through the basement. I don't know. It seems like what he's saying is like the basement was not part of every construction. So maybe the buildings, that's another sign of the fact that buildings were repurposed or dug out.
True. That's a good idea. Good
Observation, right?
Yeah, good observation indeed. So that was really nice to run into Thomas.
And if you live in Montreal and you want to go see, it's It's
See, we're right across from it.
It's right across from the armory, so you can see.
Blenheim.
So it's a good afternoon stroll at Blenheim Place.
Blenheim Place, exactly. So that was the first one we visited that day. One of many armories in Montreal. We're going to switch to the second one. This one is on the Mount Royal, and this is the Hussars, les Hussars, or another regiment that has been installed here for quite a few years. This one was supposedly built. Let's see, what did they say about this one? This one would have been built in 1 year, 1934 to 1935. And they make sure to show you there's a few tanks, right?
Built in 1 year. One and done. That's it. Next.
Oh, yeah. So efficient, these guys. Like, and again, this one looks like a castle. Look at that, the big drill hole in the back, right? So interesting, the same structure. This is definitely the part in the back looks way more modern than the front part. But again, this idea of the drill hole section in the back to have a freestanding structure where they could do their exercises. So this one is right on top of right on the side of the Mount Royal, right next to Westmount also. Look at these beautiful towers in front, which I'm sure had some kind of metal on top of them, you know, that they transformed a lot of the architecture. It'd be interesting to look into, to find some old photos of these ones to see if there was some kind of pole on the top of these towers, but I wouldn't be surprised if we found some old images with
it also looks like castle, and like if you notice the entrance looks like, you know, if you watch those period piece movies or you go to medieval castles in Europe, you know, before the drawbridge they have this gate that drops down, sort of like a regular a gate, and that's what it seems like, the shape of those entrances. If it mimics that or has another purpose to it, not sure.
Yeah, true. Huge doors, you know. Very, very impressive architecture. And again, we have like these kind of windows that are really on the ground level, making us wonder. And this was kind of on a small hill. Like this is not on a flat surface either. Plus it's on the side of the mountain. But it's interesting to see as well how, you know, who knows how deep this may go. Does it go much deeper? Is this the original site, like the original site of it? You can see it's a bit crooked, you know, in the back it's lower, which is a bit of a symbol, sometimes a sign of mud floods as well. On why would you build it so kind of crooked to have like the front so much higher than
it's actually
the back?
it's actually pretty straight, the structure itself. It's very parallel and symmetrical, but why wouldn't you dig out, you know, do it on a flat ground, or at least clear the ground before the construction, right? That's what it makes sense.
Yeah, it would make more sense to me, but I guess no. The third one that we have here, this one is also close to the Mount Royal. This is on the L'Esplanade Street, so across from Jeanne Mance Park. This one is the Grenadier, they're called. And this one would have been built supposedly in 1 year, of course, 1913. And look, it's very similar to the first one that we saw in Westmount with those copper tops. And these kind of antennas look a bit more like flagpoles that I was saying that they, you know, sometimes they say the flagpoles, they used to be flagpoles.
But you see the flagpole.
And we have a flagpole on this one in the middle section. Which was it added later on? Has it always been there? Did it have another purpose?
And look, at the entrance looks like a drawbridge again.
Yeah, very true.
And again, some low level stuff there.
And that one's also on a kind of a slant. Like in the back, it's lower than in the front. And this is a massive construction too. Like this is almost like a whole block. This is close to Rachel and de l'Esplanade. And it goes on the side and completely all around. So we can see here that there's a bit of a slant. So it's interesting also, like what a fascinating construction.
And the graffiti really adds to the artistry of the building. Really, it's so
Shows you the
beautiful.
modern aspect, doesn't it? But
That's
the door
a
with
tattoo
this,
on the building.
Well, look at the poster, Glenn.
yeah, they're hiring.
We're hiring. So they're not recruiting. They're hiring.
Getting ready for war.
Yeah. So this one's still definitely.
Oh, by
used
the way,
as
in
a
the
armory.
background, look at the church. Brothers and sisters, look at that. We're going to show you the video. Look at the church and the little round window with that. Again, remember that symbol we just showed you in the video that has those sort of like toroidal. I don't know what those specific. What's the name for those shape?
Toroidal.
I don't know if they are or
Like
not.
this?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but the flower, like a clover leaf kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
symmetrical. Look at this shape too, in the form of the circle window too. In the
In the back.
we'll show you the video explaining this, by the way, in
Mm-hmm.
in 2 minutes.
Yeah. So in this one, they also have the cadets of Montreal are based in this building. So the cadets who are like, fake cops, like practicing to be cops eventually, that they gave them some little jobs to do to alleviate the hard-working work of the police. So the cadets are based partially in this building as well. So you see how, going back, it's quite interesting, this whole slant. These are the armories, the crest of Canada with the unicorn.
It's the lion and the horse. Or-
It's I believe it's a lion and a unicorn on this one, which is the crest of Canada. Because a lot of these, started as volunteer militia, but got included into absorbed by the Canadian Army. So
a
here
unicorn. A lot of women say finding a good, strong man today is like finding a unicorn. Ooh, is it down?
Yeah, so fascinating details that we have on these.
That's my favorite building.
Oh, this is definitely one of my favorite as well. This is definitely the one that looks, the most like a castle. This is the home of the Régiment des Fusiliers du Mont-Royal. This was built in 1 year, 1909, opened in 1910, obviously. Again, the similar type of doors, right? As you were saying, that looks like the old like medieval forts with like the door opening to get you to get the bridge to get to the water from the water, get over the water kind of thing. This one's really fascinating. I was lucky enough to visit the inside of that one. There was an open, it was open for like, it's rarely open. They used to have a museum, but it's not open on a regular basis. But I went in and I was very impressed with how gorgeous it is actually
You want to show the
inside.
pictures?
Yeah, we can show them as well. It's a lot of these are full of wood. So you can see the drill, basically. This is like where they do their drills, right? The drill halls. And all the different banners are different events that the Fusiliers have participated in. So they're like, they'll go and help out whenever there's like big events. So they helped out, for example, during the ice storms. They helped out for different wars as well. They were sent a bit all over the place. They're the oldest regiment in Montreal, created in 1869. But they didn't build this, the armory until 1909. And this is on Pine Avenue, by the way. So look at the inside was like stunning to me. Lots of beautiful wood. They had like a few different like rooms. One was for the higher level of army. Like the captains had their big room upstairs, and then some others had them in the basement. I didn't take a lot of photos. I had this really nice man that was like showing me around, that decided to show me the whole place. He was just like, I guess, excited that a lady was interested in visiting this place. So this is one of the salons that they call them, that's on the top floor. So very classy, I didn't expect it to be so pretty inside. That's the view from the balcony. So again, you can see really those towers that look like medieval castles. And they obviously have barbecues.
They also look copperish to me.
It could be copper. Yeah, it could have been replaced and new copper. Very possible.
And yeah, you can see the barbecue.
This is the other view. So we can see some interesting buildings around. I guess they play poker or some kind of games as well in there. This was a games room.
They play bridge, right, Glenn? Is that what
Yeah,
they
it might
play?
be more bridge. But very classical. You know, this was the... Yeah, I think this was the...
It looks like a gentleman's club more than anything.
Exactly.
With a barbecue, those holes and...
Yeah, so the whole social club aspect of it, right? Giving a space for the men to gather. Look at these lamps were pretty impressive as well. So yeah, we can see here they participated in a few, so they were there also to help for the Olympics. So they call them citoyens soldats. So soldier citizens, basically. That's what they're called. So it's all on a voluntary base that they will be part of the regiments. And so sometimes they get called. And they're also, a lot of them have huge bands. Sometimes that's how they'll play. That's the music. These guys have the biggest band, military band, and in Montreal, and they're known worldwide. So that's another way that they make themselves shine or have a purpose, is also through music. You know, so this is going around the building. So again, it's interesting to see how certain windows have disappeared or covered up with brick now. We have some windows on different levels. There was a really big basement under, as big as the whole building. They had like an old bowling alley down there and like a whole bunch of fun things for the staff to be entertained. And the gentleman...
So that sounds to me like that's the containment facility, by the way. That's going back to the walls. Is it to keep you in or keep you out?
Sure. And this is also made in brick, you know, a different type of brick than the red bricks that we've seen for a few of the other buildings. But you see, there's been a lot of modification to this building. The gentleman was telling me that for some time the horses would come straight through. The stables were in the basement and would be coming straight through the side, one of the sides of the building. And in front also, you really have to climb up to get in. Like the entrance is really not at the street level. So it's interesting to see these different elements and to see
also
why.
Here the windows are covered here.
Yeah, exactly, right? So that's in the back and on the side of the building. So it's interesting to see a lot of modification to a lot of these buildings also over the years, you know, wondering what were these windows for at such a low level in the building too.
Okay, let's go to the next building.
Yeah, so we can see a lot of modification. So beautiful one here. Oh, this is the Black Watch Armourie. So this one's on Blurry Street. So when Park becomes Blurry, lower below Sherbrooke, right next to Place des Arts. Another castle. Again, look again at this entrance, right? So it's interesting to see how the architecture is very similar from one to the other. We also find our little copper tops as well at the top of these buildings. This one also built in 1 year, of course, 1905 to 1906. So this is the oldest one that's still around, because obviously the Craig Street Drill Hall doesn't exist anymore. But basically the Black Watch, home to the Royal Highlanders of Canada, the 5th Regiment. So another very interesting building. So it's very fascinating to see the different constructions that are used as armories. So old castle. Also, I find it interesting that armory in French is our manège militaire. Manège, which is like, would translate as a ride in an attraction park. So I find it kind of funny that they use that word in French, like a bit of a joke almost, like, you know, it's a ride.
Is armory and armoire the same word?
It's inspired by the same, It probably has the same origin. An armoire is like a place where you put your clothes in, right? Where you keep everything in. So it could be interesting to think about armoire as
Storage.
a storage. Yeah, that could be interesting. So here, Alex got in on the side and shows us how there's a lower level again. So these windows that are below street levels. So interesting to see some oddities also with this construction.
And this is closer to Old Port, so if any kind of mud flood was generated, it's closer to that.
And it's also on a hill.
It's also on the hill, yes.
It's also on a hill.
Red brick?
Red brick and stone more at the bottom. And it's possible that those stones were just added on top of the brick.
So he's shooting this in a prohibited area. Hey, he moves pretty good for a big guy. He's like a
very
white
slick.
panther. A white panther.
Super slick. Yeah. So again, look at the size of those buildings. They're so massive. The excuse that they say that, they need the drill hall. So that's why they have to have such a big construction. So this is the back of the building that we can see here. So you see, again, it's like almost a whole block of street to cover that this building covers. Another window that's been closed, that's been blocked. So very fascinating architecture.
And there's
They're
one more
really,
building downtown, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which is another one. Like I knew this building existed. I had seen it before, but when I went back with my new eyes, I was just like, wow, this is like so stunning. It's so like right downtown. This is on Cathcart. This is right across from Place Ville-Marie, which is one of the most one of the first big modern building from the 60s in Montreal.
I also on uneven ground. I just noticed that.
True. And fascinating to see this remnant of the old world hidden between all the new constructions, with its little towers, very medieval, really, really stunning.
Look at the gate.
Yeah, again, and
It's obviously an imitation of like the drop gate. So okay, so this is my theory. What if it's not an imitation? What if it's just repurposing and maybe there was a gate like this before? Maybe the building is way older than it's presented us.
Exactly.
So they tell us it's built in what? And do we have a date for that?
Yes, this one, 1 year, 1933.
1930. What if it's instead of 1933, it was built much earlier and just repurposed after for the purposes of whatever, right? And,
Exactly.
And now we're just imitating the architecture for the purpose of imitating architecture, just bringing forth the whatever. But maybe it was a medieval structure, whatever medieval period is. Like even medieval period in itself is like a dark ages. We don't know nothing about it. But it does look like that. And I'll actually filmed a little bit underneath that. Check it out.
It looks like a Masonic architecture, actually.
Yeah.
And also look at the gate. Look at on the left and right, the inlets for the gate or for the guards or something, right? Did you see it? So maybe
totally.
there was a gate.
Yeah, for sure. No, this is very, very fascinating.
See, like even there, you can see a little lip, so that it seems like the add-on construction. So maybe there was some sort of drop gate.
Yeah. It's hard to know, what was the purpose of, what was this building like doing around what was there around? What was it, what was its purpose? It's fascinating to me. They're so gorgeous. And this one also has a whole bunch of windows that are blocked off at the bottom. So what were they there for, So another beautiful, and this one right in the middle of downtown. A lot of people pass this, don't even question it. Again, the Canadian crest with the unicorn and the lions. That are also a symbol of the Royal Bank of Canada, right? So, and the fleur de lis here, through the crest that we have on the side.
And look at the harp.
Yeah, the harp, the maple leaf, the lions representing England, France. It's an interesting mixed royalty also. That's kind of interpreted through those signs.
Could that be added on later?
some of them could have been added on later, for sure.
Oh,
It's
and
hard
look
to
at-
know exactly
Look
what's
at the metal
original.
structure too.
Yeah, we're going to talk back about those. And this is the rose, which is also an interesting symbol. The clover, well, they say that they use these symbols to talk to us about the first people helping to build Montreal. So the clover, the Irish, that's the flag of Montreal. We have the fleur de lis for France, the rose for England, the shamrock for Ireland, and the thistle for Scotland. So it's interesting that those symbols, I think that those symbols have a way older signification that's
dragons?
not linked. Those look like dragons. That look like a dragon on the side there. And so it's fascinating to see all the details. There you go, all those windows that have been blocked off. Oh, Red Bull. And then we go to the back, and then we find the red brick, right? So interesting also how a lot of the building that look like they were done in stones are actually, it's just a facade that's in stone. And then it's actually a full red brick building in the background. So it can be quite interesting when you start looking in that aspect. So great filming, Alex.
Oh, you're very gracious. You're very kind. So, Melanie,
Very nice.
There's a way on. Okay, so we got to explain to our listeners how the technology is used or supposedly used in terms of gathering the energy, how that energy is harvested. We have a little video that you provided with us.
Yes, an interesting video.
And it is based on Tesla technology. And Tesla technology, it's not what that he created, but he seems like he rediscovered it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of talk that he reverse engineered a lot of the information that he found. So basically it was the old world technologies that were still in place. And Tesla, there's a theory that he basically, figured it out and understood how it worked. And basically the whole idea is to, to change the nanoparticles into electricity. As he mentions with a flag uses its environment to move, right? It doesn't do anything on its own. It's using the elements. So again, with electricity, it's using the elements that you have surrounding it to convert it into
If you break the symmetry of the resonator,
electricity.
The power won't be counterbalanced, and it will bounce off the ether.
And that's the part I wanted to show you, brothers and sisters. Remember the shape of the windows and in architecture, all the design that's supposedly decorative design. Don't they remind
Like
you
a
of
fish or
anything right
snake moving
has a
against the
purpose, right?
environment.
Same,
This is
look.
the resonator that converts the energy of the nanoworld into electricity. All other working resonators appeared very familiar. Tridents of Neptune, Zeus, Shiva, Perun, and other gods.
So this is a great
All of them
video
are symbols of power and energy.
by John Levi.
Is it an accident? This is the model of the nanoworld with an axis of symmetry. In this view, it's clear that the base of it is the Christian cross.
So what he's talking about in this video, it's
In
that-
another view, the same axis forms the Jewish Star of David.
That's it. How a lot of them. That's where they got
The computer model will
symbols
brighten
for the new religions,
this
right?
phenomenon. This is the rotation of the model of an electric propeller, so-called devil's wheel. In this one, clearly seen is a swastika. The religion, black square, cross of Komi people, cross of Udmurt, Latvian pattern. And here appears the question, what of those analogs? What made from real prototypes, energy converters? How does it appear?
So basically, Mel, all of this is the technology that allows for vibration specifically to get through. Like it's somehow all those elements that they seem decorative, they are not, and they definitely have a particular purpose. And to do a video just on that purpose, it's a story of its own.
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot that could be said on free energy. Again, we kind of want to invite you to dig deeper, to go look into this. What I find very interesting is all those symbols that we saw that he says were resonators, conductors. So this is a John Levi video. Where he found the video that we were looking at that he was talking over is actually a Russian video and that he read the subtitles of, basically. So that's where the origin of this, the background of this video. So we see a lot of these symbols on the construction of what we call churches nowadays. And it's interesting. So when you start thinking about everything in terms of resonators, conductors, you appreciate on a whole different level the architecture and the complexity of it, and realize how these buildings were made for something way greater than religion or than what we've been told. And also what's important is the purity of those materials that they used, to build these buildings. So it's quite interesting to see when you start looking into this, like the reason why certain things were exist in the architecture that we know of today. But when we realize the background and how the old world used to have this free energy, it's a very interesting subject to look at. And it made me think when I saw these different symbols. Right away, I thought about, the top things that we saw in the buildings in Westmount, for example, but also the staircases in Montreal that have these different type of symbols. And a lot of them are in cast iron. So again, this idea of were they there to attract the free energy, right, into the buildings. So for examples here, if we look at the designs of the balcony and the designs on some of these staircase, you recognize the same symbol that we just saw in the video. So how much of it was on as a conductor, as a resonator, and in a way to pass on the energy into the building. But it really blew my mind when I saw that. I was like, oh wow, okay, there's a whole it explains maybe a whole aspect of why we have so many staircases that are so gorgeous here in Montreal with cast iron rails and those symbols that are repeated everywhere, which I never really thought about before. But when I saw those images in the video, it really struck me as, interesting to see those symbols, right?
Or maybe it's an imitation of something they don't understand. It
That's
could be.
true.
It could be inspired, but we don't without understanding the true purpose of that. That could be that too. It doesn't have to be either or.
Yeah, very true.
It's been an amazing show. I really loved doing this. There's going to be a lot more of this to come. Is there anything? Did we miss anything today?
Well, one little thing that we talked about electricity and Tesla, and so. It's interesting to think about coming back to the subject of our last show, the World Fairs, and especially the 1893 World Fair in Chicago, which was called the Columbian Exhibition, which was meant to be celebrated the 400th anniversary of Columbus, but it's actually to celebrate the goddess Columbia. So it's interesting to see how they changed the narrative and the story, and how they used their new story as the backup to justify certain events. But anyways, Tesla basically lit up this whole exhibition with his alternative current, and this was the beginning of a new way to electrify the whole United States. So it's quite interesting to go back and realize that a lot of the things that we still use today, the origin is a bit murky, and we don't really know exactly how certain person came up with certain idea. Tesla is a very intriguing character that had thousands of patents. And if we do the calculation, it means that pretty much every 2 months he would have a new patent. So like, was he super creative, or did he tap into something bigger and got downloads, or did he do reverse engineering? I mean, there's many possibilities. But that's the point, to keep asking questions, to keep looking into it. And these old technologies that we showed you, and the ways that the resonators and how the things that you have on top of some buildings, there's a really nice word that's been created for that, and we call it antiquitech. So technology from the antiquities, technology from the past. So much more could be said. I mean, we could keep talking for quite a while on this subject.
Also, I think we got dumbified with the smartphone device and everything else. We've been taught in school something that, well, not taught specifically, like thanks to people like Tesla. Maybe Tesla was the last of generations that haven't been brainwashed and that were open to idea of receiving or rediscovering or re-engineering or whatever has been hidden from us. But clearly we're not looking into the whole depth of things, specifically the energy and frequencies and how that interacts. I mean, we are walking batteries, and now with all the microwave, we're going to do an episode on 5G 100% with a
and there's an interesting
and how it affects all of us and everything else, all of those frequencies. We definitely live in the frequency of the world, but we have the we have another short videos with which we're going to finish, which sort of going to blow your mind, to show you as well that how we are all co-creators, and we are creating things with our vibration. So be careful of your own thoughts. So if you're vibrating negatively, you're constantly doubting yourself, and you're surrendered with fear, which we constantly are bombarded with fear. If you turn on your radio, news, etc., and even here at the show, when you watch, the round tables, we're not trying to scare you. We're trying to discern away from the fear, specifically to show you, do not be afraid and rise. We say rise up, but raise your energy. Raise your energy to the next level, whatever that level is. Brothers and sisters, it's been great. Melanie, thank you so much for being here. Any last words?
Thank you. I mean, I'm so happy to be able to share all of this with you guys. And armories, it's a fascinating subject. There's some all across Canada, all across the States. So very interesting. We tapped only on a small portion of them, but very interesting subject. And free energy. I mean, let's go back to that free energy, instead of paying Hydro-Québec.
That's a great one. And brothers and sisters, we'll see you on the next one. Please watch this video. It's only a minute long.
Nobody is ready for this one. This probably looks familiar. It probably looks like these cymatic patterns that I talk about all the fucking time. And all these things is a petri dish on top of a speaker and a light on top of it, making these cool mandala-like patterns. Now this man made one of them in a 3D design software and took cross sections of it and put different colors to those cross sections. So using a 3D cymatic pattern, this man was able to create a perfect image using sound and light. I want you to sit and really think about this, because this is the code to reality. This is the code to the matrix, or whatever you want to call it. This is how energy interacts with itself to create everything that you see. This is why cymatics and sound is so important. Vibration in general. It's all waves, and that's how we make sense of it.